Assalamualaikum. Welcome to ILAM Research Webinar Series 2021. ILAM Research Webinar Series is a platform for ILAM to share the finding of the research conducted by ILAM under the Education and Research Committee. I am Assistant Professor LAR Jas Fasikin. Today we will be sharing another research findings conducted by one of the researchers on behalf of ILAM. For your information, ILAM have launched 3 areas of research in 2021. Research number 1 was intended to study on the post-COVID public park design consideration in relation to public health and safety. Number 2, the study on the cost implication on public park maintenance. And number 3 was the study to gauge the gap between landscape maintenance practice and facilities management practice for public park. Today, we will be sharing the research finding from the research conducted by Associate Professor Dr. Shureen Faris Abdul Shukor from UPM on the post-COVID public park design consideration in relation to public health and safety. While the researcher presenting, I would like to invite all viewers to share your views, suggestions, and also engage with the Q&A session with the researcher through the comment box below. With that, I would like to invite Dr. Shureen to share her research finding from her study on post-COVID public park design consideration in relation to public health and safety. Welcome, Dr. Shureen.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. My name is Shureen and I'm from UPM. First of all, before we start, I would like to thank Institute of Landscape Architects Malaysia or ILAM for inviting me to speak in this ILAM research webinar series. And also I would like to point out that this research which I'm about to share with you has been sponsored through a grant from ILAM this year. So therefore we have completed the research, the small research recently, and today I'm going to share with you our research which is called Parks Usage During the Lockdown, Preferences and Design Consideration. First of all, as an introduction, we all know that since last year, March 2020, the whole nation has been put into total lockdown. Yeah? And due to that, we found out that visiting parks has been such an ordeal for many of us who used to visit parks maybe daily or maybe once a week. Yeah? And as we also know that visiting parks has been proven to support physical and mental health, especially among urban residents. And the restriction imposed during the movement control order has given restrictions on the use of public space. And the social distancing order or SOP has contributed to many obstacles for people who are always using parks. Yeah? And from this graph, we can see that as many as 43% of Malaysians were forced to work from home. And what motivates us to do this small research or short research? Because we found out that before MCO or Movement Control Order, as many of us can enjoy or we have the accessibility of going to the parks. But when the pandemic hits, many of us were confined to our living spaces. Yeah, not all of us have the opportunity to have our own garden. And many of us as those living in high-rise, low-cost flats have been forced into small, confined spaces. And as we can see, these are the most of the view that they can see, urban views or views to other concrete jungle, as we say. Therefore, this research, we would like to know the stress level of Malaysians who were in a lockdown, and we also would like to know their references, what can be done to improve the design of urban green spaces. Therefore, this presentation will discuss two parts. The first part is the usage of parks in urban green spaces prior or before, and also during the MCO in Malaysia. And the second part, we also would like to know Malaysians' preferences and design considerations for parks after COVID-19. For the first part, we have carried out a survey on the comparison between Malaysian usage of urban green spaces. And as I mentioned before, we would like to know the activities before the lockdown and also during the durations of the pandemic. And therefore, we have carried out an online self-administered questionnaire survey in the month of between May to July 2021. And we have managed to get a total of 415 responses from the whole of Malaysia. And as we can see here, these are the respondents which have participated in the online survey, where about 50% or nearly half are from the range of the age of between 20 to 29 years old, and about 28% are from the state of Selangor. And we also would like to know the distance of their home to their green spaces. As we can see, mostly the distributions are about the same, ranging from within 500 meters and up to a driving distance of more than 1.5 kilometers. And we also would like to know the mode of transportation of assessing the green spaces. We can see that majority, as most Malaysians, they opt for using a car, and the least are taking public transport. And there's also about 28% who mentioned that they are assessing the green spaces on foot, and there's also on bicycle and also motorcycle. And when we ask about their frequency of weekly visit to urban green spaces before and during the lockdown, we can see that about 54% have mentioned that they did not visit at all, which they choose to stay at home due to the lockdown. And we can see that it's interesting to know that about 37.8% mentioned that they went to the park at least once in a week. Yeah? So during the pandemic, the percentage dropped. Those who went at least once a week dropped to 30.1%. And we also asked the distance that they are traveling to urban green spaces before and during the lockdown. We can see that when the pandemic hits, they prefer to go to the green spaces which are nearer to where they are living, which is about less than 500 meters. And the driving distance, you can see that before the pandemic hits, they are willing to travel more than 1.5 kilometers. Yeah? So this is mostly expected because due to the MCO of the strict restrictions, they choose to go to green spaces which is nearer to their to where they are living. All right. We can see here the type of green spaces that they visited. And again, we can see that during the lockdown, many opt for having the activities around the green spaces at their own home. I guess many of us still remember how gardening has becoming part of Malaysians' activities, with people are buying plants and a certain species of plants has been a favorite, and the price has gone out. So this is we can see from this survey that it has been proven that they prefer to stay at their own garden, working on their own garden. Yeah? And of course, during the MCO, they mentioned that most of them, about 35.4%, they prefer to go there alone or individually, yeah, because of the strict SOP. And we can see that even during, before the pandemic, many opt for going to the urban green spaces, either in pair or they like to go in groups. And also, many mentioned that during the pandemic, they have choose not to go to any green spaces at all. And this is quite interesting on the time preferences. Yeah? So as expected, many Malaysians, they like to go to the park in the evening, maybe after the office hour, yeah, between 5 to 8 o'clock. And also during the pandemic, they still prefer to go in the evening, which is 39% has mentioned that they still prefer in the evening to the parks, yeah, even though the SOP has been imposed strictly on the park users. And also we can see that in the morning, many park goers during the lockdown, they prefer to go in the morning, and also before the lockdown, they prefer to go. 31% also prefer between 6 to 11 a.m. And then durations, we can see that before the lockdown, about 50% mentioned that they spend between 30 to 60 minutes. Yeah, and what we can see here, there has been a drop in the usage of the time spent in the green spaces, where during the lockdown, about 33% mentioned they spend less than 30 minutes, and 26% mentioned they did not go to the green spaces at all. Yeah, and we can see positively, people are still going to the green spaces even though there's a lockdown. So meaning that people still find solace, or they want to enjoy the green spaces even though has been a strict restrictions during the movement control order in Malaysia since last year. And for the activities carried out, we asked what kind of activities that the park goers involved with during the movement control order. And we can see that most probably the same group who enjoy jogging, they still carried out the same activities before the lockdown, and during the pandemic, they still carried out their activities, which is jogging and walking. And the next activities that they enjoy doing is they like to enjoy nature, and which is about the same group, but there's a slight drop of 2% compared to before the lockdown. And about 20% mentioned that before the lockdown they prefer to relax in urban green spaces, and during the lockdown there's a slight drop. So, but there's only a difference of 3%. So meaning that those we can conclude that those who enjoy going to the urban green spaces, they still carried out their activities even though during the lockdown. And we also asked, based on the mean rate, that how is the stress level during the lockdown is quite a positive results when we see that the stress level has slightly dropped when they visit the green spaces during the lockdown. Yeah, so this means that it's quite a good or positive outcome that the people are still using the green spaces to reduce the stress that they're feeling during the lockdown in Malaysia. And the second part is that in the online survey, we would like to find out what are their preferences in the improvement of the park design during after the COVID-19 pandemic. So what we can see is that we have carried out a literature review from similar studies from journals. There's about 12 which carried out about the same research from in the European countries such as Spain, the Netherlands, in Denmark and Sweden. And we found out that they have listed out suggestions that how parks can be improved after the pandemic. And one of it is to create sanitization facilities. The second is bigger green spaces. And also they propose to have a multi-purpose spaces. And also the parks should cater for different age group. And we have flexible spaces where it can become a gathering space, it can become a football field, yeah, a flexible spaces. And they propose to have a longer route for bicycle lanes and also wider pedestrian walkway. And also there are suggestions that to create smaller pocket parks in the city, and also to have a shorter distance to travel to urban green spaces, especially in the city, and to increase monitoring in the park to maintain social distancing. And these are the results, the mean that we have identified from the online survey, and we can see that many park goers, they prefer that there are sanitization facilities in parks, especially to remind people to keep their distance, to keep on the proper hygiene. Yeah? And the second is to have a bigger urban green space. So we can say here that when we have a bigger green spaces, meaning that people can move, they have a peace of mind when keeping their social distancing. Yeah? It can be that part we can expect from most of the park goers. And the least that preferences from the respondents, they mentioned that smaller urban green spaces, meaning that the most least preferred smaller spaces in urban green spaces. Yeah. And based from the suggestions, we also have open-ended questions. We list out what Malaysians would like to see in the improvement of park design or the future usage of parks. We can say that they wanted to upgrade the standard of park maintenance. I think this is what has always been mentioned by park goers. And they also wanted to have the park as a means to disseminate information to the public, meaning that the latest informations, especially about the pandemic. Yeah? And they also wanted to have safety and security aspect be increased. Yeah? As you can see here, the sanitizations and also having a sort of a boundary in the green spaces so that people are being kept to remind to keep their distancing. Yeah? And also they mentioned that during the MCO, there has been some confusion on the SOP related to green space usage. If many of us remember during the MCO, since March last year, there has been a few cases where people have been fined because they were jogging in the park and everything. So people highlight that they are a bit confused on what to do, what they can, so that's why many of them mentioned that they wanted a clear and standardized SOP. And in terms of park design, they wanted to see some improvement. As we can see from the earlier slide, that they wanted a bigger green spaces so that they can keep their distancing. Yeah, and more greeneries and better planning, especially in urban areas, as we can see from the first slide when I shared just now about how people living in a confined spaces, especially in the low-cost flats among the urban areas. Yeah, and also part of this grant provided by ILAM, we have managed to have 2 students, yeah, to apply some of the suggestions that have been identified from this research. Yeah? They have come out with design that can be implemented in for future park design post COVID-19, and one of it is having sanitization stations such as this. Yeah? You can see that we can create it to become an interesting area where people can sit and they can read words of wisdom, and we use design to remind them to keep their distancing. Yeah? And this is one of the a review of the design produced by our student. And we come to the end of the presentation. As a conclusion from this short research or short project, we can say that urban green spaces will still remain as a valued place for health, socialization, community building, and identity formation in the post-COVID-19 world. And looking at the transformation that we are witnessing now, and in the coming months, it will be critical to measure the changes in use and perceptions of public spaces in order to inform urban planning and design. And it's quite interesting to point out that the findings from this study have shown many similarities with other parts of the world. And the use of green spaces has been drastically changed in the pattern and preferences among the users. Yeah? So improvement in terms of the facilities and accessibility to accommodate the social distancing it can be seen as an important aspect to be taken into consideration among designers and local authorities alike. With that, thank you very much for your attention. And before we end this presentation, again, I would like to thank Institute of Landscape Architects Malaysia, or ILAM, for the generous sponsorship for this short project. And with that, I hope to see you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shureen. To all viewers, Feel free to engage in the discussion with the researcher through the comment box below. And don't forget to screenshot your attendance in this webinar. Based on the presentation, we can learn that pandemic COVID-19 has given an impact on the pattern of public park usage. The use of green spaces have been drastically changed in the pattern and preferences among the users. The findings show that a new consideration is needed in designing the public park in the future to ensure it will contribute to the well-being of the people during or post-pandemic. The researcher has outlined several relevant factors to be considered when designing a public park, especially for post-COVID public park development. All research findings will be published on the ILAM website. So we hope it can serve as a reference for all to continue developing our profession and contribute to the people's well-being. On behalf of ILAM, I would like to once again to thank Dr. Shureen for conducting this research and sharing it with us today. Thank you to everyone for joining ILAM Research Webinar Series 2021. And don't forget to like and share this ILAM webinar, and also to like our ILAM FB page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Assalamualaikum. Have a good day ahead.